a big test. Okay, so something I wish to talk about. If I had better internet, I would wish to. Um, oh, I just had a thought. I know it's amazing, right? I don't think I need these. I think I might have this slob business down a little better than I did. Yeah, like the only guy I really see going on within this nation about the breakout of Corona government too is Cranky Frankie. And how can you say about this man? He's very articulate for the most part. Um, but I'm keeping an eye on this. Like, well, just hang on a second. Sorry there, Mr. Bannon. And if you don't like this man, well, probably don't wish to watch what I'm about to say. So this morning, I was sitting here, I clicked the map there, and we came up and went from 9 to 10. So I think day before, I think we were hanging around 8 there for a while. Yesterday went to 9, and this morning 10 confirmed. But which tests are we doing? Because from what I gather, what's going on here is, if I don't know, if you pass a couple of things, then what they do is they take a swab or they take something, they send it off to our version of the CDC, where I believe this virus got away from to begin with in Winnipeg, and then they send it back to let you know whether you got it or not. That sounds really, really slow. And then you got the Americans, our cousins just south of us. The CDC there was, handing out test kits to the hospitals, and then found out they had a bunch of defective test kits. Like, this actually really happened. You're not hearing any of this on CBC. You're not hearing, we're panned. You are panned. You went to work today. You went to work to pay 30% on the average of your hard labor, of your compensation, of a limited time that you have on this planet to contribute $1.6 billion just to one company. That doesn't include the $600 million or any other extras. $1.6 billion that you slave today to make sure that these people would have a lifestyle. These elitists that are not acting as a free press. Now these guys are acting just like Chinese or a Cuban press, a propaganda center. Nothing is going on about this. The country is falling apart, and we are about to get hit with the SARS. So if you can see the map here, well, not about to hit. Okay, so they're registering 10. Okay, registering 10. Yay. All right, register your goddamn 10. Yay. But here's the problem. How many people have been tested? And if you notice here, it shows, okay, that was, I think it was London, it was Toronto, we got Vancouver, but nothing showing the interior BC. Where are the 10 coming from anyways? Right? They talk about mild government Corona 2 symptoms. How do you talk about mild government Corona 2 symptoms? What do you mean mild? They're also, look, they've been talking for weeks now about, it's longer than a 14-day incubation. China come out and told us that. They're shills, they're posers, they're hirelings at the fucking WHO, right? This corrupt dude from a corrupt government in corrupt part of Africa is heading this whole thing. And he's still going on about 14 days. Like, what the fuck? I think there was only one country on the planet that has noticed the 30 days, because they said 24 for weeks, 24-day incubation period. We still went on with 14 days. Then they said 27 days. I don't remember recall which country was just automatically went 30-day incubation. Well, that makes a lot more sense. Now we're talking about those that recover are still spreading it. can still spread it, might still spread it, are still infecting other people. So where is everybody here? Where's the flight crew that went and recovered the folks out of China and brought them to Trenton? Where are all these each man and woman that was acting at Trenton, supervising the quarantine, that had no medical coverage, but like no proper suits coverage at all when these folks were quarantined? I think it was over a week ago that China reported that no, if you're within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes or more, you just got yourself a prize. You got government corona part 2. What the hell is going on? And why the hell isn't the propaganda, the CBC that we're forced to pay for, doing anything? You know, all I've seen them do, and honestly, I try not to watch them too much, so at my own peril here, if I misspeak a little bit, but what the hell? They keep going on and on. They're making this wetsuit dude, okay? This hereditary chief dude, okay? He's breaking all the customs of his people. He's disrespecting his elders. He's doing all this shit that he's not authorized to do by his elders, and that is not the custom of those people. And so we got people being bussed in from the U.S. We got Tides Foundation, the Sierra Club, the little Japanese shill there on the coast. What the fuck? David Suzuki Incorporated, 1978, all giving this guy money. So he's on the take. And now we're having a national breakdown of commodities, of transport, of people being able to freely go from point A to point B. You know, I thought it was bad enough when the BZ posers that supposed to be, your representatives, passed this law that said, coppers can now pull you over and they don't have to have a fucking reason. Whoa! The public has a right to access the roads. Read it. It's right at the beginning of the criminal code. So now, a driver is a person. This is what I tell you guys about. A driver is a fucking person created by the corporate body government, the corporate body politic. Therefore, when you are presumed to be that person, you have lost every right, every God-given right that you sprung out of the ground with by nature, by your creator. Because everyone comes from this land. Okay? Just because, there was a catastrophe a long time ago and it split up and made continents, the land is the land. Everyone comes from this land. Everyone has a right. But anyway, so CBC is so busy reporting on making the boogeyman discriminators, making the boogeyman supremacists, that anyone that's proud of their nation, the heritage of this nation, is now deemed to be a criminal of the fucking state. Guys, this is China. China is playing before your eyes, only they're dressed up in I don't know what suits they're wearing. They're posers. These fascists that China is running, that infiltrated our public service, are destroying our nation, destroying this land, destroying relationships with families and neighbors. They're destroying people that are stuck on the street. They're destroying families, making sure they end up on the street. The agencies, the institutions are failing everyone on this land. Hey, I'm watching a teacher strike. Yay, okay, teacher strike. They got their grief. Well, what's with all the communist flags? So what are you indoctrinating our kids with when they go to these crown corporate schools? Is that what you're fascist? They want to be fascist communists? You want to be Bolsheviks? Is that what we're down to now? You feel that you're entitled because you went to school, and now you're one of the entitled ones. One of the 1% entitled. Well, there's two types of entitled, okay? There are those with wealth and those with intellect, those that went to school. And I guess you're that 1% entitled to indoctrinate our kids, our property, because the legal society says you can get away with it. We have been invaded by fascists. I can't believe what the hell's going on. And if you believe there's only 10 infected in Canada, which it looks like most of them are right within the jurisdiction of British Columbia. Yay! Yay! You know, CBC, I think every news organization, I think every man or woman who acts as CEO of any of these news corporations, anyone of title within any of these news corporations, I believe if we get a lot of deaths out of this, I believe that each one should be held liable. Don't you come out here and tell us that we have to shut down independent voices of the free press, which is the customs of this people and the customs of this nation, which is our right to free press. Okay, who the fuck died and made you the god of free press? You're just a propaganda shill, and I'm about to prove it, and I want to go over an interview with you guys about this. I sure hope I'm not yelling too much, but man, this is just getting fucking ridiculous. But we're going to have a shortage of goods here, okay? China is not the same China it was in the past, okay? They manufacture, almost all our drugs are manufactured. If you can afford to, man, I don't care if if you're homeless and panhandling, well, you could be watching a phone. I don't know, but if you're hurting, picking up our aspirin, our Tylenol, our Advil, it's all made in China. It's made in fucking China. Go get some. Be prepared. It's funny. I was born with bronchitis. All right, and I've said this before, so yeah, no, I wasn't a candidate for the armed forces. Yay, it's probably a good thing, because I would have probably spent my time in the brig. But that's what my big brothers always told me. But fuck, I just lost my thought. I'm just upset. Bronchitis, yeah. So over the years, I mean, oh man, killer. And if I didn't get it would turn into something just fucking terrible. And I worked outside all my life, and I ride motorcycles, which are always in the wind, right? So, winter in Saskatchewan, working outside, winter in Alberta, working outside, winter in Toronto, working outside, winter in Manitoba, working outside, winter in BC, working outside. That's basically my playground. Outside in the Northwest Territories. God bless you folks in Hay River, by the way. Awesome town. One of the best towns. Great town. But, so anyways, so here I am, over the years, and, you can't be taking meds all the time, like pharmaceutical meds, especially like penicillins and that, but I would end up with infections and that because the bronchitis would get out of hand, and it creates havoc. Like you actually get to a point where you wish to die. So I have some kind of inkling of how folks are feeling around the world right now that are suffering with this government Corona 2 stuff. I call it Corona Gov 2. I don't know. I'll figure out something that rings, but Corona Gov 2. Yeah, that sounds good. Because as far as we know, and the lack of coverage, like investigative reporting, where is it? So independent, free press, those of this nation that decide to cover stories independently, and now CBC is crying again, right? Trying to tell their little puppet, he must do something about independent news again. The government here, this is the home, and we're free and we're strong, or we used to be. And in less than 5 years, we have been taken down fucking hard as a nation, as people to survive. You folks, you teachers, you people that act as teachers, you people that work off the government the public funds. So that way anybody that receives a paycheck that comes through public funds, you all work for the public. And if we're not allowed, or if we are interfered, if our right to create and make a living and follow a dream and access our natural resources is interfered with by you communist clowns, that's wrong, by the way, okay, it's crooked, then how the hell do you expect to get paid? If mankind on this land is not free to go and create wealth, then how the fuck do you guys, what, are you just going to finish raping what little natural resources are allowed to be raped? Or are these going to be, communist approved mill sites and factories, or, well, fuck, factories. What factories do we have? You know, Bombardier, the one that the public supports, that it might as well be a public company. Or a government entity. If those of mankind on this land, within this nation, are interfered with their right, our natural right, our God-given right to access our natural resources and to critically think and dream and imagine and build something with our own two hands that might improve the lives of my fellow man, of our fellow man, then you guys are going to go down the fucking tubes anyways. You're going to bring everybody down. You are bringing everybody down the tubes. And it's bad enough that we've allowed you to indoctrinate our property, our kids. Because that's all you're doing. Our kids are dumbed down. Like, dumbed down. If you don't believe me, ask your kid to sit down and write a poem before dinner. Ask your kid to sit down and write a thought down on paper, and ask him to write it, or ask him to print it and use proper grammar. Good luck. Anyways, so here I am. I'm watching this, and I'm just getting furious. I'm getting furious over this. I mean, this thing is a world pandemic. Okay, they're still calling it an epidemic, right? But this is a world pandemic. At the very minimum, if this thing gets shut down, if we don't all get infected, if we're not already infected, because they're not doing anything. No one's doing anything here. Nobody's taking any fucking precautions. Not any one of our public services. Not any one of the institutions that belongs to the public here. Sure, they all got great names and this and that, but if you get the public money, then the public owns your goddamn ass. There's no such thing as government money. It all belongs to the public. We create wealth. Everything here is done on promise to pay one day. Everything. And it all comes from the people. It all comes from this nation. It all comes from every man, every woman, and every young one on this land. It doesn't come from Trudeau, that disrespectful man-child. So anyways, this thing was down there this morning for a while, and so we're still at 10 confirmed cases. I told one of my kids there, hey, he's on the coast, right? And which is like the worst infected area at this time. It's probably going to be, the epidemic area, I would imagine. But when it does really take over. But the media, this publicly funded propaganda bunch, media, state media, has a duty, responsibility, and obligation to make sure that the public is informed, and they're not informing anybody. Okay, they're lying about this whole wet, and please forgive me for anyone of the Wet'suwet'en Nation if I mispronounce the name of your tribe. I don't know the clans of the tribe, but all I did see was an elder and a matriarch that earned her position, and you guys have just slapped her across the face and sent her out. Her and your other elders. To me, every brave on that tribe within that Bear Clan or whatever, every one of those every brave there should go find your ass and give you the ass kicking of your life. You should get slapped around in a circle like the bitch you are, motherfucker. How dare you treat your elders that way? How fucking dare you? And you may not be here anyways because you're too busy slumming with a bunch of sellouts, causing everybody harm. You, for all I know, you already got the virus, pal, because you're not fucking smart enough to stay within your own village, to stay within your own people, to serve your people. You're a hereditary chief? Then why aren't you serving your people? Why are your people saying, hey, no, this ain't right. This ain't the customs of our people. What the fuck are you doing? Why aren't we having this discussion? Right? Because you're just like the man-child. Right? You think you're goddamn well king. And you're going to go and you've got the backing of that Communist Broadcasting Corporation that not the chief guy, because I'm sure he doesn't fucking work for a living. I'm sure he doesn't have to go out and earn his coin. I'm sure he gets a check. If I'm wrong, good. Show me your fucking job and what you do fucking to earn your way. Except for sitting on your ass and receive so-called donations to your Wet'suwet'en company. Wet'suwet'en Nation company. What the fuck's with the company and why isn't CBC going on about it? Why hasn't any journalist? Because this is the takedown of a nation. These are fucking traitors. Anyways, a lot of people within this nation are going to die over this corona. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm pretty sure of it. If you just take, okay, so you see this big red mark? This is what happens when you have corrupt public service, when you have corrupt regimes, dictatorships that tell people to shut the fuck up or you will be punished. And we know how they punish them over there. Like over here, we're still being sweet. It's a public punishment, which they do over there as well, of course, for, traffic tickets or some kind of minor detail. But over here, we're just, I'm sorry that we're just not all indoctrinated to look at the man-child as the great and wonderful poobah. Our daddy is not some shill public servant that for some reason has the demented idea that he's the Lord of everyone on this land. Everyone on this land was born free. Everyone on this land has a right to free speech, has a right to free press. We don't need a document written by some fucking faceless shills from across the pond in England and some other bureaucratic, crown corporation to hand us down any kind of paperwork that says, well, here's your fucking rights. Oh, here's your charter. Here's your no, that constitution, that indenture for this trust company that operates as Canada, as a government of Canada. You're bound to that, okay? You're fucking bound to that. And if that doesn't stand, then no public servant is bound to the Constitution, 1867, 1982, the two covenants we put into law, or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And obviously there is no rule of law here except for the ancient common law that has always been here since the beginning and stands till this day. But we didn't pick up. We didn't teach our kids. For a lot of us, didn't teach our kids. We didn't teach our kids that this land is you, and you is this land. Okay, your body comes from this fucking land. All right, so we've got those whose bodies and forefathers and traditions have been on this land for a couple thousand years. And we have those who maybe been here for 100 years or 200 years or 250 years or 50 years. That does not negate the fact that you have nowhere to go, and this is the only land that you have. And by allowing these fascists to take over our public institutions and act as pretenders, as government servants, is only going to cause all of us harm, loss, injury again. Fuckers. Anyways, I know just noticed Raging's on. Welcome to Slow Internet, Raging Humanist. Yeah, oh, okay, here we go. Oops, back up here. Okay. Boomer, everybody duck. Boomer. So, I imagine most of you guys know who Steve Bannon is, okay? Not everybody agrees with him. Some people just totally despise him. Usually they're progressive, communist, left-wing motherfuckers, but whatever, that's not my issue. That's their fucking issue. That's their problem, not mine. So, but let's just go over this interview. Let's just take a couple of minutes and go over. And this woman here, Simone Gao, Simone Gao. She's awesome. Yeah, you know what? CBC should study her work so they can learn how to be investigative journalists, so they can learn how to ask critical questions, so they can, so they can actually report worthy news and quit making up, this whole fascist, racist bullshit, Like CBC should be sued. We should all sue the CEOs and the actors within CBC that keep promoting racism on this land. They're creating issues that don't exist. They may touch on some issues that exist, but they're creating issues that just don't exist. And this is why I can't listen to them. At the odd time, I will hear maybe not a bad interview on Radio 1, or Radio 2, whatever the fuck you get in English. But it's just terrible. It's disgusting. It's terrible. Let's go through this.
Their situation is. The world has to see this unfiltered by the Chinese Communist Party.
And
right now, there is no justification, no moral justification to have the firewall up. This is an emergency and it's a humanitarian crisis. The firewall must come down, and any American company that's providing technology or capital or personnel to keep that firewall up is going to burn in hell, okay? Because now
I think he's talking about you, CBC. You were keeping the firewall up. You were not allowing people, you can sit there and say, well, we can't have anarchy in the streets. Well, what anarchy means to self-govern. Well, you can't have self-governing folks on the streets. We were born with that. Self-governing is your property. Slavery is outlawed in all its forms on this land. Well, we can't have the masses getting, and blah, blah, blah. Well, listen, if you guys would have actually reported this in the proper manner, there would be no worry of this. But no, you're not. And what's going to happen is, and it's going to be your fault, and you should be held liable for this. You and that fucking man-child need to be held liable for what's about to happen in Canada within the next couple of weeks. I hope it doesn't. But it could. Your fault. Your fucking firewall. People are too stupid to know the truth, so that way you got to hide it from them until the point comes down to when it becomes a pandemic or epidemic within this nation, and then there's nothing we can do and everybody gets sick. Right? When have you ever... You guys, you suck. Okay, you suck. You're a bunch of fascists and traitors to every man, woman of this nation.
They are just prolonging the suffering of the Chinese people. That's number one. Number two, and I said this a couple weeks ago, the Chinese Communist Party must take the best doctors from the world, from the CDC, the World Health Organization, from the Imperial College in London, from Hong Kong University, Dr. Gabriel Leung, the top virus hunters, the best, have to be allowed to get into Wuhan and Hubei province and see and report back exactly what the problem is and what their recommendations are. And number three, the Chinese Communist Party has to be able to accept doctors and nurses from all over the world that would volunteer, military or otherwise, to go to Wuhan and go to Hubei. Because right now we see, I think there's 5,000 doctors and nurses that are infected, okay? This new crisis you have is a collapse of the public health system in the central province and in Wuhan city. If that collapses, you can have tens of millions of people die, And that is something the CCP can avoid by taking nurses and doctors from all over the world and let them go to those central things. Until the government does that, to me, it's showing that two things. Number one, they don't care about the Chinese people. They don't care how many people die. And number
anybody that ever sees this, if anybody ever does see this, ask yourself this: do you give a shit about the Chinese people? Do you give a shit about mothers and fathers and grandmothers and daughters and sons and cousins and uncles and aunts within that nation? Do you give a shit, or is it just, hey, let's have all the pollution over there and let's have all the slaves over there. I won't have to think about it. I can be Greta Thunberg and I can sit on my little fucking pony and prance in front of the world. Oh, and then I can incorporate Greta Thunberg Inc. As a place to put my $43 million I just received from my little pony ride, that now I won't have to pay taxes, because then I can write the shit out of everything and write it all off. Just like David Suzuki Incorporated in 1978. Huh?
Number two, they don't care about people throughout the world. What they care about is what they've always cared about, and that is their hold on power and their hold on wealth.
China says the coronavirus epidemic is coming down. But is it really so? Steve K. Bannon, host of War Room Pandemic, sat down with me to discuss the most critical aspects of this pandemic. What's the truth in China? Why did the Chinese government still refuse to let American experts in? Could the virus be made in a lab? Why does the Chinese leadership rush biosafety legislation? Could America see generic drug shortages if the epidemic prolongs? I'm Simone Gao, and you are watching Zooming In.
The way she says it, it almost sounds like one of my Wing Chun exercises. Sulam Tao. But it's Simone Gao. Sulam Tao. Simone Gao. Anyways.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon, for being with us again.
Thanks for having me on, Simone.
Okay, so we've been hearing conflicting messages from the Chinese government these days. Well, on one hand, the Politburo sent out a statement that the Wuhan situation is not under control. But if we look at the CDC number from China, just during the last week, the numbers, newly added confirmed cases has been dropping. Every day from a week ago, it was 15,000 newly added cases. Yesterday was 395. So what is going on?
First of all, every number you're seeing that comes out of the CCP and comes out of China is a total and complete lie. They're all lies. They've tried to go back and have different methodologies about how they're counting this. So people should just discount that. And I know people that watch your show are sophisticated enough to understand the CCP just lies. It's the crime is that the mainstream media in the West repeats these lies over and over and over again.
Sorry. That sounds just like Canada. That sounds just like Canada. All you receive from public servants here are lies. And I'm not talking about mom and pop working in the low levels of administration. I'm sure you guys have seen the interview, the phone call interview with the woman who was the manager of one of the, what do you call it, where they incinerate bodies, crematoriums. And, she didn't have anything good to say about the upper echelon. So when I talk about public servants, shills, posers, traitors to this nation, that's who I'm talking about for the most part. I won't get into anything more than that at this time.
As we sit here today doing this interview, 1/10 of the world's humanity, 10% of the world's humanity is under some form of quarantine in central China. We have anywhere from 60 to 80 million, maybe 100 million people in Hubei and around surrounding areas under a strict quarantine. We have another 4 or 5 or 600 million people throughout the rest of China on some form of lockdown, which is a quasi quarantine. And the reason that is, there's only two ways right now to solve this virus. A vaccine, which a vaccine is anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half, 2 years away. Or what they call social separation, which is quarantine. And what we know is that there are not 700 million people under some form of quarantine with only 70,000 infected. The numbers are huge. Miles Guo says there's millions. Other people, scientists are saying there are hundreds of thousands. The deaths go from anywhere from, Miles Guo says it's over 200,000 to other people are saying it's in the tens of thousands. But one thing I can guarantee you and promise you, that the numbers that the CCP are putting out are total and complete lies. And here's why we know this. Right now, today, when we're doing this interview, just before we started, the Politburo came out and said, quote, "We do not have the situation in Hubei province or in Wuhan under control, and that it is, quote unquote, more complex and more severe than we anticipated." And so they are essentially, which is a huge loss of face, right? And particularly this is the committee that President Xi, he's the convening authority. He's the top person. He and Wang Qishan.
All right, so I've mentioned this in the past. I don't know if you get it, but the Chinese have a concept of the natural order of things as far as authority goes, dictatorship goes. So Xi would be the natural order. He is daddy, okay, uncle. He is daddy. And so anyone who doesn't hold the title that Xi does is under, a title under, okay? You only hold the authority of the title to which, whether you've earned it or been given through crony communism. You know, it's funny here, we are a common law nation, a free enterprise nation, and everybody's talking about crony capitalism. Yet, we have a public service that operates both on the socialism side, all right, taking everything you have whenever they wish, and then they operate on the crony capitalism side, taking what is rightfully belongs to the people and giving it over to their capitalist friends, like, Lavalin, Loblaws, whoever they wish. They just do it. We have no opposing party at the House of Commons, where the common man is. That's built on, well, actually, they actually pay Ontario millions of dollars a year to rent that spot, because Canada has no metes and bounds on this land, guys. There's no borders. There's no metes and bounds. There's only jurisdiction, which I've gone on about in the past, and a lot of people just don't understand it, and I don't give a shit. People need to wake up and start figuring this crap out. There we go. Oh, I guess I was yelling at you guys lots, eh? Sorry about that. So, you're not gonna, and it's only my wish for everyone to think about the public service that we have here, the way they act, the way the media that we're forced to pay, all right, forced to pay. They say, well, we're not forcing anybody to pay. Well, yeah, you are, because you're taking of our natural resources and you're paying these guys. You're taking of our labor, our blood, our sweat, our tears, and you're paying these guys. And we have no say. There is no democratic vote by the people, of the people, and for the people, whether we wish to have a state propaganda center or not. So, yeah. So we're like, these guys have taken this common law land, this nation, and they've turned it, they've twisted it into a pseudo-socialist dictatorship regime. And that's what we're living with right now. And why we're sitting there wondering what the fuck and losing faith in our institutions. All our kids are being indoctrinated. And not only that, now our kids are being taken away from their families. And those that don't have families are being taken. And those that may be autistic are being taken. and experimental operations, experimental drugs thrown at them. Because all of a sudden, a minor can sign a consent form on experimental procedures, human experiments, by from a society that is self-governing, the medical society, which is self-governing. Okay, it's an anarchist body, self-governing body, to which they don't even have an oath to do no harm. You ever notice that? When they got rid of the oath, things changed in the medical association. And there again, I'm not hacking on the individual man or woman that has put their life into medicine because of their heart for their fellow man. But I am hacking on public servants and those that are running off of our hard labors. That we're forced to pay these motherfuckers anyways, and it's just disgusting. But yeah, just keep it in mind about you know, the similarities between China and Canadian public service.
And so for them to put that out for the world's media to see, admitting that they are not on top of this situation in Wuhan, this biblical plague that has infected the poor people of China, is in the mainstream media. It should be outraged that they've taken these lies for so long and just kind of repeated them, and now you're starting to see, I think the lies are coming to part because you can no longer control the information that's coming out of Wuhan. The tragedy of Wuhan, led by one of the stories, and your audience should understand, that affected people most in the United States, was the chief medical officer for the Wuchang Hospital in Wuhan when he died, right, in the line of service to help his fellow countrymen in China. When the ambulance moved away to take his body to be cremated, his poor wife, who's one of the nurses, was banging on the ambulance and crying out for her dead husband. That really hit many Americans in the heart. And so I think you're seeing today that the Chinese Communist Party, who lies about everything, now their lies are being exposed to a global audience.
Mm-hmm. Just last week, I attended a CDC briefing at the National Press Club in the States, in DC, and the spokesperson from the CDC was still praising the Chinese government for transparency and their ability to build those massive hospitals. And she cited the official number from China. So my question is, do you think the American government is aware of the possibility of the scope of this epidemic?
I think there's there's obviously different people in the government. The official policy is to try to be, and one of the reasons I think they've been doing that, and President Trump has been reinforcing that and saying good things about Xi, is they're trying to get the cooperation of the Chinese Communist Party to actually give real information, and most importantly, to allow CDC personnel, virus hunters, in from the World Health Organization, CDC, Hong Kong University, Dr. Gabriel Leung, others that could actually go to Wuhan and start to get their hands around this situation. I think they feel that if they call out the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, for their lies, that it'd be much tougher to get there. There are many people in the government that know that the Chinese Communist Party is lying to people. They're lying about these numbers. They're not being transparent at all. But I believe for the greater good, remember, we can't start to solve this problem. This is Dr. Thea and Lian-Chan Han had this two-part articles in The Hill called The Biological Chernobyl, brought on by the CCP. Until we actually get world experts in there to assist the Chinese people and to assist these heroic doctors, you're only going to have this virus is only going to metastasize. Mm-hmm. The number one priority for everybody is to get there and help the Chinese people, to help stop this in China, and by stopping that, to stop it spreading throughout the world. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think President Trump is trying to accomplish. But as everybody that watches your show knows, or goes to NTD TV or goes to the Epoch Times, they understand that the Chinese Communist Party is a collection of gangsters. They think like gangsters, they operate like gangsters, and they don't care. And I've said this many times, they do not care if 25 or 30 million Chinese die in Hubei province or in central China. They could care less.
You know, he's got some good points there too. Gangsters. Do you think? Those fascists that operate within our public service, that believe to be the kings and queens of Canada, do you think they give a shit? Honestly, do they act like they give a shit? Do they do anything that shows they give a shit? We're sitting here with, like, you know, if this was Rome, we'd be on fire. That's what's going on here. We have not prepared for anything. None of us. But, you know, Americans got their own shit going on too. I mean, what they're doing and how they're handling the virus with the folks that are on the West Coast there, I forget what town that's at their Air Force base. Yeah, the government, they got them in quarantine in an Air Force base, and so they wish to take them out of the Air Force base and put them in it was a complex, a home for disabled people, to get them off the street, right? You know, a place for disabled people to live, and the place got run down so bad it's not worthy. You can't rent the place out. It's what do you call that? You know, it's fucked. And so, and this complex is in the middle of a neighborhood, residential neighborhood. And so, what the feds and that are doing there is they want to get them out of the Air Force Base and stick them in this condemned fucking, you know, I don't know if it's a motel or whatever, but multiplex building that was condemned and can't be used to house disabled street people anymore. But we can house and quarantine folks right in the middle of a neighborhood that are deadly sick. Well, where's the fucking quarantine? Yeah, are you telling me? Well, it's you know, to me, the Americans are acting just like us. They're gonna stick them somewhere. Everybody's gonna be social, blah 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 blah, and yeah, no, it's just gonna add to the pandemic or epidemic. I personally believe it's going to be a pandemic. How could it not be? Look at Italy.
All they care about is holding on to power. And so all you're going to see is a continuation of their lies and their misrepresentations.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that sure sounded like Canadian, you know. That sure sounded Canadian, didn't it? Hey? Lies, feed the public shit just to hold on to their power.
As you said, 760 million Chinese people are under quarantine, and half China is locked down. But things are not improving. The spread of the virus is not being stopped. What does that tell us?
It tells you that it's out of control. We have a pandemic. Dr. Stephen Hatfield wrote this book, and I recommend everybody in your audience get this. It's called 3 Seconds to Midnight. Dr. Hatfield is one of the world's leading experts here in the United States, one of the top experts on pandemics. In this book, he goes through all the historical pandemics. He wrote this book before this pandemic came out, but it's really scary. And what Dr. Hatfield says, there's only two ways to solve this right now: a vaccine or social separation in a quarantine. He was just on our show, War Room Pandemic, the other day, and what he said was, this is proven, because it continues to have to quarantine additional people, that the quarantine, the social separation in central China is not working.
Well, I got a question for everyone. How the hell do you have a social separation when our public service isn't even screening people properly? Like how do you have it? Like, when you don't know where the virus is, who has the virus, who's the carriers, you know, who's been spreading it around for the last month? Like, when you don't have this information, how do you have a how do you have a lockdown? Like Italy? Did you folks see what's going on in Italy? And they've got whole towns quarantined, and they have the army and machine guns and cops and machine guns and more machine guns, making sure nobody leaves the town or goes into the town. So, I mean, we don't have the manpower to do such a what would be the word? I don't know, but we just don't have the manpower to do such a thing here. Number one, I'm not sure if this shit was planned or not planned just to communize the world, but I will tell you one thing, guys. We're in big trouble. It's not just about those phony protesters. that are getting paid to upset your day-to-day lives, and this traitorous so-called chief that's insulting his elders and treating his elders poorly and breaking the customs of their people. That man is rogue. That man is rogue, and I don't know why Mr. Friesen would have to go and interview, the clan matriarch. Where the fuck was CBC? You see, CBC doesn't like citizen journalists or doesn't like independent free press. Let's just say independent free press, because people with no budget that don't live on $10,000 a month like CBC does, they don't. They can go over and talk to somebody who holds real authority within the real clan, the real Bear clan, who does present that clan and the elders of that clan to the world. No, CBC can't show that, because that would fuck up their narrative for helping to destroy this nation. I believe that's their agenda, to destroy this nation. I believe they're all a bunch of paid for shills. The sooner we can shut down the finances of CBC, the better off this country, this nation, and all people will be. They got to get shut down.
And here's why it's not working. Number one, they suppressed the information for too long. They lied to people for too long. So the possibility they had to contain this back in December, the Chinese Communist Party misled everybody and lied about everything. It then has now metastasized, and it's gotten out of control. And the measures they've tried to put in are just not that thorough. You've seen what they've tried to do, and they're just not that on top of things. And so this continues to spread. Dr. Hatfield and many of the experts here think that it's gotten now out of control in China. And one of the things he says, and other people like Miles Gore and myself say, you can tell how out of control it is because no one on that central committee today in Beijing, not one person, and not Wang Xishan and not Xi, have been to Wuhan, right? And the question has to be from the Chinese people, why have their leaders not come to Wuhan to assess the situation in person? There's two reasons. Reason number one, they don't want to be associated with the failures of the quarantine, right? They're firing local party cadres, but they don't want to be associated. Number two, they don't want to die, okay? When you have the senior medical personnel, the doctor that's in charge of the number one hospital, and the doctor that's really in charge of kind of the overall medicine for the entire, and public health safety for the entire region, when he dies by contracting the virus and he's dead, that's why CCP will not go down there. So all of their other talk is happy talk. Until Xi goes to Wuhan and stands at a quarantine center and looks the Chinese people in the eye and says, I'm on top of this and I'm going to be here until this thing is solved, it's all lies. And so every stat they put out, every number they put out, every way they want to spin it is a total and complete lie. This is Beijing, where all the party cadres are. This is Shanghai, where many of the party cadres and the most sophisticated businessmen, when they sit there and they don't believe anything the CCP says, that tells you everything you need to know about the CCP. They know they're lying. They know you can't depend upon their information. So if you want to save yourself, you essentially have to self-quarantine. So you have among the wealthiest and most powerful people. This is how deadly this virus is. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how wealthy you are, you're not protected by this. And that's why the wealthiest and most powerful people in the most powerful centers in China are now self-quarantining.
There are some other unusual movements by the Chinese government. Recently, the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology released guidelines on safety and management of the viral labs. And Xi Jinping also made comments about accelerating biosafety legislation. So what's your read on this? I mean, why do they make such a sensitive announcement at such sensitive time?
I pray to God every night that this virus actually came from a bat or from a bird, and that it came to a human transmission and then human to human, that it actually is something of the physical world. Because Those people and those voices that are out there, they're saying there's something about that P4 lab. It's not a random thing that the one lab in China, a pathogen 4 lab at the highest levels, built by France after SARS to help the Chinese people find vaccines for more SARS-like virus. It's not by chance that that's in Wuhan. The only one in all China is relatively close to where the market was. We got to pray that it's not something that either came out of trying to work on a vaccine and leaked out of the lab, or it was part of a biological weapons program. The disturbing thing about the CCP is the moves they're making now, talk about biological lab safety and things like that, concern me. Also, some of the rumors they're trying to start that the CIA was in back of this start to concern me. The people in China,
I don't know. Was Shifty Shift involved?
and the expatriate Chinese should understand that the Chinese Communist Party has a terrible record when it comes to biological weapons, okay? And they're hiding and lying of their biological weapons program. So you have many voices in the West now, Senator Tom Cotton, Bill Gertz, Miles Guo, and others that are sitting there going, it's all lies and it came out of their weapons program. I think we ought to pray that it was natural, because that means it's going to be easier to find a vaccine. There are many things about this virus that are quite concerning. Okay.
No, now from what I've seen, it looked like it was. I think I believe I've said this before, but it looked like somebody had caught it, the coronavirus. It was a little different. They were in the Middle East or from the Middle East, ended up in Switzerland, I believe, and the Swiss doctors caught this and said, hey, look, this one's just a little unusual. Was sent over to Winnipeg, to our biological warfare lab, because that's what it is. And then it was worked on, and then, was smuggled out of the country over to China. From Canada, there was arrests made. And the professor that was basically allowing the Chinese to pay him off to smuggle the shit out of the country, mysteriously dead. Now, CBC doesn't want to talk about this professor's death. No, of course not. Nobody wants to talk about shit. They want to feed you shit and keep you in the dark. You need to hate me because I have light-colored skin. You need to hate me because I am one of this nation. You need to hate me because I'm a boomer. You need to hate me because I have toxic masculinity. You need to hate me because I believe in my creator. That is what you get from CBC. This is what you get from the public service on this nation, with this nation. These fucking fascists that took over and infiltrated our public service.
Okay, number one is the asymptomatic period. Many people have caught it, have said, hey, the person I actually caught it from didn't have any symptoms.
That's right.
Dr. Li, the great hero of Wuhan, he was the whistleblower. He was the one that the Chinese Communist Party, in their devil nature, tried to make him sign a thing saying he was a rumor monger. They tried to ruin his career. They were going to throw him in prison. It turns out he was right. He was a truth teller. He was a whistleblower. If they had listened to Dr. Li and his cohorts of 8 doctors back in December, they might have gotten a grip on this thing. But what they cared about is their power, and they said, no, you're a rumor monger. You had to sign these documents that said Dr. Li basically had to say he was lying.
Now, is that not exactly what's happening here? I mean, is that not exactly what happened to our general that blew the whistle? And he ended up at court? Our patriot, our guy, our man. Well, actually, the Queen's man. The Queen that serves the people. Okay, her man, right? He come out to let everybody know the goods, because what this public service was doing was wrong. And so what do? They haul his ass in court, and he's got to sit there for fucking 9 months fighting these bitches and be represented as, well, I guess he was acting, I don't know if I guess there's some kind of legality in military, but at the same time, that's exactly what's going on. Anybody that tells the truth, if it goes against the narrative of these fascists that have taken over our public service, then they are attacked.
line. Dr. Lee then went back to, when he was basically exonerated by the Supreme Court of China, he went back to the hospital to volunteer to work again, okay, to help this. And he says later, when he was dying in his last interview with the New York Times, he said, I made a mistake. I got careless. He took off his hazmat suit and didn't have all the thing when he worked on an 82-year-old patient that had no symptoms. And he caught the disease from her, and he was dead 10 days later. And I understand that the doctor, the head medical professional in Wuchang Hospital, I've been told, I haven't verified it, that he also caught this from someone that was asymptomatic. So right now we don't know, and one of the reasons we don't know is that the CCP is not allowing the world's top virus hunters in there to check this out.
So we don't know, and we don't know who has it on this land within this nation, and the public service and the Communist Broadcasting Corporation is not allowing anybody to get any information. In fact, they're trying to shut down any information from anyone, any free, anyone of this nation that was born free, anybody that wishes to partake in the free press. And don't forget the free press, the whole idea of the free press is to keep honest government, to do investigative reporting and get it to the people for good or for bad. You know, like I said, if CBC didn't want to, panic, put everybody in fucking panic, they could have been bringing this news out proper, systematically. Hey, just in case there is, prepare. I think it's time. What should people prepare about? They should be talking about what people should be preparing for. There should be the #1 article on the news. These folks that bust in from the Tides Foundation on the U.S. side, they all should have been arrested, got a fucking record, and never been able to cross the fucking border again. What the hell?
Everybody's depending on information they give, and you can't depend on anything the CCP gives you because they lie as easily as they draw breath.
Mm-hmm. The BBC did an interview with a doctor who was treating the first patient of this coronavirus outbreak, and this man, he's like an older man.
Yes.
And
patient zero.
Patient zero. We don't know if it's patient zero, but just call him patient zero. He is bedridden. He doesn't have any mobility. He doesn't have any. Obviously, he didn't go to the seafood market.
Yeah, just to throw this in, the idea of finding patient zero. Okay, so the one they're calling patient zero isn't patient zero. They just told you that, but the whole idea about finding patient zero is because if you can find patient zero, the first one to get this, then you can retrace their steps, see who they talked to, where they've been, and it's just like veins, and then they can follow back and go get everybody or as many folks as they can that would have had, potential contact to the virus. All right, that seems to incubate, they say, as much as 27 days now. Fucking crazy.
But the interesting thing is, the doctor will not reveal who he has contacted with, because this man cannot get this virus by himself, right? We know he's not related to the market, but who he has contacted with, the doctor wouldn't reveal. So I think that's kind of telling, right?
It's telling, and it's unacceptable. The world's now 31 nations in the world have this. The world's economy is about to basically lock down because of the Chinese, the interlocked nature of the global supply system, the global supply chain coming out of China. One belt, one road. Things that you and I have talked about many times. This is what Senator Tom Cotton has to say. Senator Tom Cotton says, it's not incumbent upon the world to come in and find this information, keep asking questions. It's incumbent upon the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing and the rulers, okay, to come forward and have the world come in right now to both assist the Chinese people and to help protect the safety.
Okay, so that's a bit of a bailout from this Cotton guy. And here's my opinion about this. The reason that's kind of a fucking bailout is because, yeah, sure, it's incumbent of the communist dictatorship that runs slave labor over there to let the world know exactly what the fuck is going on because it's crossing borders. But at the same time, it's incumbent upon us as a nation to go, oh, something's up. Oh, we better prepare. Oh, what do we have in inventory? What are we going to need if this thing does break out? Oh, do the people know what they need? Should we not start buying what we need now and give the people time to build up on this stuff before there's a panic and a pandemic? And this is where I'm holding every man and woman at the CBC liable. This is where I'm holding every man and woman that acts as a public servant within that Privy Council liable. Every fucking one of these guys is liable. This should have been, incriminated, or not incriminated, but, encroached upon bit by bit, letting people know, hey, this could be, we don't know, don't panic, but get to the fucking store and get your goddamn Advil. Get things that beat fevers. Get things that clear lungs. And like I say, that hot mustard thing, because of my bronchitis, I found it's awesome. I probably shouldn't say nothing because I may want more before before it gets bad. Well, nobody, actually, I'm not even worried about it because nobody here believes me. I talk to people in my day-to-day life. I go down and pick materials. I went and fixed, had a chain shortened for my chainsaw because I'll be cutting some wood to, I've got enough two-stroke gas to last my chainsaw quite some time. And because I need heat. I don't have a pipeline like you shills that are protesting pipelines. I don't have a fucking pipeline. I have to actually go out and get my own goddamn heat. And you can't burn a green tree. It's not about cutting down the forest. It's about scavenging or foraging for which has already been offered to me by nature that will burn. But hey, could you catch a squirrel with a box? Do you know how to skin and boil and gut a squirrel? Hey, you city folks, you're going to get hurt the worst. All right? If I were you, I'd start downloading. What's going to happen if we get all sick here and all of a sudden we can't keep the power going? There's only 37 million people in this very vast nation. What kind of excuses are your fascist public servants going to come up with? Oh, don't worry, we're on it. Oh, you got no TV now because you have no power because there's no antenna because they put us on digital satellite and gave every household one free satellite if they wished, right? Okay, so you can run your generator. Well, there's no gas at the gas stations because we haven't been able to process the oil that we are processing into fuel because everybody's sick and nobody can show up for fucking work.
Of the world. This shows you something we have said for years and years and years and years. The Chinese Communist Party is a danger to the Chinese people, and more importantly, they're a danger to all mankind. They think like gangsters, they're a bunch of thugs, and now they've got this situation they either created or if they didn't create it and it was natural, they suppressed the information about it and lied about it to keep their own power. Either way, they have helped destroy China. And now in doing this, they're starting to destroy the entire...
See, and that's just wrong thinking. That is wrong thinking. Can you imagine if you have a public service, okay, even in a communist dictatorship, let's say communist dictatorship, which is what the man-child does aspire to be within this nation, within his post-state nation. But can you imagine if they actually got on this right away and said to the people, hey, there's an issue, we got to start preparing, everybody, anybody, blah, 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 show up here, we're going to work on some tests. If they actually put their best foot forward instead of lying and hiding and cheating like corrupt motherfuckers that they are, and I'm talking about their public service or their dictatorship as well as our public service. We don't have a dictatorship yet. Okay? Yet. I don't wish to serve, unless I wish to serve. As simple as that. Every man, every woman on this land is free, and slavery is outlawed in all its forms on this land. And that's something that man-child doesn't seem to get, because he's one of the entitled ones. Okay, you have somebody that's never had to work for a living, never had to figure shit out for himself, pretending to be the leader of this state. Well, we don't have leaders. Every man, every woman that takes a leadership role on this land, on this free nation, is a leader. Okay, these guys here in Ottawa and within legislatures are servants, and they have to stop acting like leaders and start acting like servants. This rogue chief, okay, hereditary chief, this rogue chief is acting some kind of leader when he is supposed to be the prime servant of his clan. The prime servant of his clan. They're rogue. Everybody's gone rogue. And CBC is just promoting it like it's all good.
Entire world. That's why they have to be held accountable.
The WHO expert went to China yesterday without the American experts. So, the American government has been pressing the Chinese government several times. Why do you think, what are they afraid of? What are they trying to hide?
They're afraid of two things. Number one, they're afraid to show the outside world we need the foreign devils. We need America. America's the enemy. America is the enemy of the Chinese people. America is the enemy of the Chinese Communist Party. America is the enemy of China. So they don't want to, if they have to have the foreign devils come in, they're afraid they lose the mandate of heaven. They've lost their legitimacy because they had to, in a panic, depend upon the Americans to come in and save them. Number two, and more importantly, they understand that when the rest of the world and the top doctors, including Dr. Gabriel Leung from Hong Kong, when they get there, they're going to understand that, number one, either this came out of a biological weapons plan, or if it didn't, you guys lied about it, and you didn't focus on Dr. Lee and these other doctors, you might have been able to stop this in December. And that's when you're going to find patient zero. Was he really the first patient, or was it in November, or was it in October? Okay, that's what they're petrified about. They've always been petrified of one thing: the truth. They can't tell the truth. This is how they've suppressed and destroyed the Tibetan Buddhists. This is what they've done in East Turkestan with the Uyghurs. This is what they've done with the Falun Gong. This is what they've done with the underground Christians. This is what they've done with the underground Catholic Church. This is what they've done to the Chinese people. All they have done is lie and suppress for decades and decades and decades, and they got away with it. And they got.
Does that not sound like, let's see, the Canadian government? Isn't that what it sounds like? Just like those fuckers? Lie and suppress. Now, granted, they're kind of like wannabes compared to Xi, to that regime over there. But they're aspiring here. All this turmoil that we see here within our nation is aspiring to make us just like that, just like China.
Got away with it for one reason: that the Western capitalists and companies made so much money on the suppression of the Chinese people that everybody just looked the other way and said, yeah, okay, the Chinese people, heck with them, okay? Now that it's become the world's problem, right? Now that the supply chain has made it a world problem, now that people are sick in Iran, in the most sacred city of Qom, now that people in Lombardy, in the most wealthy part of Italy now have an outbreak, okay? Now that there's an outbreak in Canada, now that there's an outbreak in the United States, now that 31 nations have this, right? And it looks like it could spread throughout other nations. Now it's the world's problem. Now everybody's saying, hey, I thought the Chinese guys, they told me it was only 70,000 and a couple thousand dead. What do you mean it may be hundreds of thousands or millions, What do you mean they don't have it under control? Now that all their lies are being exposed every day, and you know why? She is right. The virus is a demon. And the demon cannot allow to hide. This demon virus is exposing the Chinese Communist Party for all their lies and misrepresentations and their suppression and brutal put down of the Chinese people of every ethnicity.
the only good thing that this comment that Bannon's making here that I can see is that it's like fair warning. We cannot allow this to happen here. Everything, unless it's an actual, for security of this nation, national security of this nation. Unless it's the national security of this nation, everything the government does should be free. Uh, Free to the public to go look up. It should all be on the internet. All of it. Unless it's a national secret. I mean, we're not hiding anything from any foreign entities, anyways. They know all our shit. We don't got a lot of shit. I mean, we've had this disgusting wannabe communist, pathetic regime trying to flip us over since Trudeau Senior, and basically has destroyed our military capabilities as well as our scientific capabilities, as well as our economy, as well as our water, as well as everything. Everything. And what do? Oh, the world's coming to an end because you fart too much. Oh! And lie, 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 lie. It's just nothing but fucking lies.
Of every religious belief, of every organization out there, they're now being held accountable for that.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I think the suspicion of the origin of this virus is not going to go away for a while. And, the head of the Wuhan Viral Lab, Dr. Shizheng Li, she and a bunch of American researchers published an article in 2015 in UK's Natural Medicine that they synthesized a new virus that combines the coronaviruses from bats with the existing SARS virus, making this new virus more pathogenic than the existing SARS virus and able to transmit to humans. And the American government terminated this research because they think this new virus is a public health threat. We're not aware of whether Dr. Shi has ever terminated her side of the research. But at least, such man-made high pathogenic virus has existed in that lab, in the Wuhan lab. So if the rumor is true, if the truth is really the lab-constructed virus got out, how do you think the world will react to it?
If that is true, the Chinese Communist Party is over. That's why they're... Look, we don't know if it's true or not true. Here's what we do know. There's enough information coming out, enough uncertainty. We can't have uncertainty. China has been around for 10,000 years. You may lose China because of this virus. This spread of this virus may destroy and kill enough people or destroy the economy that China as we know it may not survive, right? It looks like right now, and they're the ones that admit that we don't have control of it, and we're 8 weeks into this. And the experts say, hey, if the quarantine doesn't work, it just spreads, right? And the mathematics is it doubles every 6.2 days. Well, Dr. Gabriel Leung, just his mathematics says it's going to run through at least May. That's over 1 billion people. So the question gets to be, we have to have all information out there and we have to have it all down. So it doesn't have just to be rumor. It doesn't have to be people saying, hey, I saw a report here or here or here. Senator Tom Cotton sums it up. It's incumbent upon the Chinese Communist Party to have the world's experts get into Wuhan, talk to the experts. They have a new major general in the PLA. I think her name's Wen Che, right? Wen Che, who's the senior, Shen Wei, who's the senior biological weapons expert for China, is now in charge of the situation there. She has to invite in the world so we get all the information and find out what is actually going on there. We need to get our understanding of this virus, and we needed to do it today. And why do we need to do it? We need to do it to help save the Chinese people of all this immense suffering they're going through, right? The psychological damage, the scars. China is such a society built upon the family, and part of when your ancestors pass away, your grieving process and the burial rites and everything that goes is endemic to thousands of years.
It's funny how China is still, even under a regime and a dictatorship for so long, the difference between family within the nation of China and family within the nation of Canada. And what I'm saying is the public service here and the institutions here and the propaganda media has worked so hard to demoralize the family unit here. As the family unit within this nation has been attacked and attacked and attacked by our public service and by propaganda media, and that's a big difference. So there are a lot of good families, a lot of family units left in this country. I think there's a lot more of us than there is of these haters, but you don't really see it much here because these people, like these people that claim to be journalists and media, they don't care to show any of this stuff. You know, they don't care to show anything normal. All they do is seem to propagize or propagandize a narrative that suits the division and racism, and you know, they just keep propagandizing racism and hatred and division on and on and on. That's why I can't listen to these fuckers, because they suck. They just promote hatred. You know, I don't know why people buy into that shit.
Years of Chinese society, and now when they go door to door, you know, when Vice Premier Sun, you know, her mandate, she goes door to door and they knock on your door and take your temperature. If they deem you have the virus, you go to a quarantine center, not to a hospital. And what you do is your family never sees you again. You leave through the back to an ambulance when you're dead, and they take you to cremate you, and your ashes are just then thrown somewhere, right? The psychological scars on the Chinese people are going to be very deep because of this. So this means it's incumbent upon the CCP, and I will tell the CCP, and they know that I'm one of their sworn enemies, but they have to understand something. If they continue to suppress information, the world is going to unite, every nation in the world, and say these guys are dangerous. They're a danger to the Chinese people, right? They're a danger to the country of China, and they're dangerous to the world, and they must be removed.
Mm-hmm. You know, before the coronavirus epidemic stops, I think China is already having a humanitarian crisis. I don't know how many of those footages if you have seen.
I've seen hours of them.
Yes.
It's heart-rending.
So yeah, I wonder if the world's mainstream media will get on top of this and say this.
The mainstream media is not going to get on top, but the mainstream media covers for the Chinese Communist Party. If you see the mainstream media's coverage of this, it's embarrassing. All they do is repeat the same lies, and maybe every now and again. I saw today on Christian TV where they picked up my interview with Miles Guo, and they're trying to get it out there to try to get humanitarian aid to the people of China. I went on Fox 2 weeks ago now, and I said 3 things have to happen immediately by the Chinese Communist Party. Number 1, the firewall must come down. It must come down. The people of China, the citizens of China, the decent, hardworking, old 100 names in China have to be able to communicate to the world. They have to get out there and tell them what their situation is. The world has to see this unfiltered by the Chinese Communist Party. And right now, there is no justification, no moral justification to have the firewall up. This is an emergency, and it's a humanitarian crisis. The firewall must come down, and any American company that's providing technology or capital or personnel to keep that firewall up is going to burn in hell, okay? Because now they are just prolonging the suffering of the Chinese people. That's number 1. Number 2, and I said this a couple weeks ago, the Chinese Communist Party must take the best doctors from the world, from the CDC, the World Health Organization, from the Imperial College in London, from Hong Kong University, Dr. Gabriel Leung, the top virus hunters, the best, have to be allowed to get into Wuhan and Hubei province and see and report back exactly what the problem is and what their recommendations are. And number 3, the Chinese Communist Party has to be able to accept doctors and nurses from all over the world that would volunteer, military or otherwise, to go to Wuhan and go to Hubei. Because right now we see, I think there's 5,000 doctors and nurses that are infected. Okay? The new crisis you have is a collapse of the public health system in the central province and in Wuhan City. If that collapses, you could have tens of millions of people die. And that is something the CCP can avoid by taking nurses and doctors from all over the world and let them go to those central things. Until the government does that, to me, it's showing that two things. Number one, they don't care about the Chinese people. They don't care how many people die. And number two, they don't care about people throughout the world. What they care about is what they've always cared about, and that is their hold on power and their hold on wealth.
You were talking about the CCP mentality. It's interesting. I talked to one of the world's top biological, biochemical weapon experts a couple of weeks ago, and he did not believe China is developing biological weapons. And the reasons are, one, he said biological weapons are not effective on battlefields. Number two, he said, unless you have a doomsday mentality, you wouldn't use biological weapons. And because China has such a long history, like you said, and a booming economy, the Chinese government wouldn't have a doomsday mentality. Do you think that CCP has a doomsday mentality?
I think they're totally godless. They're total atheists. They are totally materialistic. They only relate to money and power on this earth as it is. So they're the representatives of Satan on earth, right? They're completely godless. So therefore, they have no perception of an afterlife. They have no perception of heaven. They have no perception of kindness. This is a government that has suppressed the most decent, hardworking people on earth are the Chinese people. In the
All right. So did you catch that? Okay. So he's talking about suppressing decent, hard-working people, and I have no doubt that most of the Chinese folks are decent, hard-working people. It's really hard to have like solid family units unless you are decent people. Period. Otherwise, you have totalitarian style family units where it's not so fucking decent. Anyways, I won't get into that, but I do think of a few ideologies in mind when I think of that. But yeah, this is exactly what's going on here, and this is exactly what I see and what I believe the CBC is actually doing, and the public service is doing through the CBC to us. Now, the other networks follow the CBC because they need the crumbs from the king's table and to survive. And if they lose like advertising budgets, as CBC does through newspapers and other media stations, or basically that, or say a government grant, and get their piece of the 600 million that was handed out on top of that 1.6 billion that CBC already takes from your blood, sweat, and tears, your hard labor, your 12-hour days, your 10-hour days. Those guys that, a lot of them aren't now, but a lot of the folks that were doing like going away from home for 3-month stints and just working and working and working and working so that they could earn enough coin to come home and get their family set up on some kind of humble home that is now like 3 times what it's actually worth, or maybe 4 times of what it's worth, because of bad planning, bad economics, bad mass migration policies. Take a look at the rule of law. Well, there isn't one. If there was one, everybody coming across at Roxanne Road would have been sent back. They would have been put into a cubicle and sent back, or just sent back, or refused. I know I've been refused going down to the state side. It doesn't matter that I have family down there that's been there since I don't know, fucking longer than they've been up here, and it doesn't matter about anything when you deal with those border guys. They just don't give a shit. But here we are, carrying their luggage across instead of sending them back where they came from in their cab. Okay, so like we got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of folks coming into this nation, coming onto this land, without a proper invite, without a proper okay from as guests, because they are guests. They're not from here, so that makes you a guest. A guest is always a potential enemy. If you're a guest at my home, you're a potential enemy, and there are certain rules that you need to abide by that don't apply to I as the host. Why? Because this is my domestic jurisdiction. This is my home. This is my castle. This is my property. And you guys, you start picking up the fucking word property. You start using that word property, 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 property. Because the public servants, these fascists, and the anti-fascist fascists, they have no authority over a man's property or a woman's property. Only you do. Only I do. Why? Because it's proper. It's proper and it's exclusive to all others. And it's as simple as that.
The Chinese people, with the spiritual nature of the Chinese people, whether it's Falun Gong, whether it's the Tibetan Buddhists, whether it's the underground house Christians, whether it's the Catholic Church, right? They go out of their way to destroy that. Why do they go out of the way of all the stuff they destroy in China? Why are they most focused on destroying that? Because they can never have the Chinese people have their own spirituality. They can never have the Chinese people have their own ability to grow and develop and to find comfort in something that's spiritual, that something that's not the party. So by definition, they're a doomsday party. By definition, they believe in the worst aspects of human nature, and they play upon that. That's why it's all about money and power. And that's why in a situation like this, they never defer. Their default position is not let's do the right thing and let's help the Chinese people. Let's help our countrymen, right? What their natural inclination is to take Dr. Li and to throw Dr. Li in prison and to say, Dr. Li, you're a rumor monger. And Dr. Li is a hero not just to the Chinese people, he's a hero to the world because he said, no, this is what's happening. This has to get out. And then when he was totally exonerated, instead of leaving, he went back to the hospital to help his fellow citizens and to help the Chinese people, and he died in the process. He's a martyr to the doomsday mentality of the Chinese Communist Party. Mm-hmm.
We got this. Yeah, so, he's talking about the doctor, that the early warning system. Early warning system. Right? Now, what happened to him? He gets hauled down to the cop shop. He gets intimidated, twisted, and threatened to shut the fuck up. And just to make sure that you are liable, okay, to shut the fuck up, we're going to make you put a thumbprint on this statement saying that you will shut the fuck up. Like, this is how the public servants, the fascists that have taken over our public servants, are running this nation through our public service. This is exactly what's going on. That show I did on Ezra, it was a little bit funny because we're still somewhat free, but those guys find the loophole. I'm telling you, if those guys find the loophole, they're going to come and attack. They're going to come attack, Ezra as director of that limited company that he runs. And that company is going to get fined. Right now, I think the punishment was certain fines. Then Ezra is going to come out and beg everybody for support to pay the fucking fines and tell how evil, everybody is and blah, 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 instead of shutting his fucking mouth. I mean, he could have went to that meeting and been a little fucking smarter. And that's what I try to teach people. I'm a fucking legal idiot. And I need answers. So I'm here to ask questions. If I go somewhere, you drag me somewhere, or invite me somewhere, I'm there asking the questions. I need to ask the questions because I don't understand this shit. Right? So please define. Please define. That's what I say. You always point to whoever is moving the court against you. You point at him and you say, and you look at the man in the black robe, the translator, the 2 to the 3 dimension translator, the high priest, not Big Daddy, the high priest. And you say, sir, you know, what exactly, can this man define this? Because I don't understand this shit. All right? That's what you do. You ask the questions. Read the goddamn Gospels. See how the Lord handled things when he was, yeah, they killed him because you know what? Corrupt government doesn't have to stick to any law. All right? If you take a look at the way the public service, the so-called, the de facto government, but if you take a look at the way this corporate body politic operates now, they don't stick to any laws. Okay, if they mark you, they will come down on you and they will try and stick you to some goddamn laws. You could be just going down the street minding your own fucking business. The next thing you know, you're in a room of inquisition, and you know, and most people, you just panic and go, chirp, 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 tweet, 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 and tell all kinds of fucking wonderful stories. But every line in a story, every word in that line creates a story, creates a story, creates a story. So if you write one sentence and you take each word out of that sentence and you columnize under the word into another sentence, into another sentence. And this is how these investigators work. These guys are not stupid. Now, I don't know if these, those guys that were interrogating, interviewing, our funny little blueberry there. I don't know if, they're good guys or bad guys, or they had good intent, they're just doing a job and thought it was kind of a joke. That's what it kind of looked like to me, because I don't see anything really serious about it. But the funny little blueberry, he's putting everybody, he took these people in, he made them pay their dues, he made them work pro bono, or what do you call it, intern, he made them do internships before they could start making a living at this, to see if they were good enough. And if he blows that whole corporation because he's just a jokester, a big mouth, a wise guy, he just put them all out of work. And he just knocked out, one of the only independent news stations that we have. And thereby, could you imagine CBC if the government came in and shut down Rebel News for the Blueberry's fucking wise guy antics, right? Oh man, they would be gloating. Hey, all of them would be. CTV, Global, you name it. Well, yeah, fake news got shut down. Oh yeah, they'd have all kinds of stories how he got shut down. What a bad guy. What a bad place. You shouldn't have listened to these people, and on and on and on. When you stand like that publicly, you better be fucking clean. All right. And if as everyone makes mistakes, everyone. I've never met a man or a woman ever in my life that didn't make a mistake, that didn't err, that didn't do something wrong at some time in their fucking life, right? But there's a thing called forgiveness. It's called begging for forgiveness. It's called please forgive me. I fucked up. The highway to hell is paved with good intentions. But, forgiveness goes a long way. This is a Judeo-Christian nation. This is not a communist dictatorship. This is not a fascist nation. Pretty much every time I'm going on these days, I'm putting somebody up who fought fascism like 100 years ago, okay? Which was basically the foundation of the Canada to come about, the nation of Canada to come about. And now the fascists have infiltrated our public service, and they're twisting it upside down and backwards. And if you notice in this interview, our public service is doing the exact same thing that the communist dictatorship regime is doing over in China.
I think when he talked about the doomsday mentality, he actually meant, if I cannot live, I will not let you live. It's kind of like a mutually assured destruction. if you threaten me, I cannot live. I would not let you live.
I can't talk about that, because what I know is that if they did have a weapons program, right, in and of itself, because remember, they signed the conventions. Let's go back in time. In 1985, they signed the Biological Weapons Convention that said they were dropping all offensive biological weapons research, okay? As did the United States and everybody else. Why do we do that? If you take the three types of extreme warfare, nuclear, chemical, and biological, biological is by far the worst, and I disagree with the professional who said it's not effective. The problem with biological warfare, it's too effective. As bad as nuclear warfare is, and you saw that in Chernobyl, as bad as chemical warfare is, at some point in time it dissipates. Biological warfare, you're really changing and you're getting involved in God's natural plan, in the mechanics of the natural world. You're changing it. You're acting as God in the living world, okay? And that's why it's so hard to control. That's why it's so hard to find vaccines for. That's why, of everything, the biological conventions and warfare have been the ones we've been most concerned about. When the French were approached by the Chinese Communist Party after the SARS crisis in around 2004, 2005, the agreements of the nations of the world, okay, and the French, in the French government, there was a huge debate on this, of building the path of the P4 lab in Wuhan, because you couldn't trust the Chinese Communist Party. They had to admit at that time that they had still been doing an active biological weapons program, but they weren't going to do it anymore. This was the deal that was signed to make sure the P4 lab that we're talking about could even come into existence. The Chinese Communist Party admitted they had lied to the world from 1985 to basically 2005 for 20 years. Why do they lie? Because the entire regime is a lie. Everything they say is a lie. It's built upon a lie. Lie is in their DNA, like like any kind of chemical compound. So when people
Boomer tech. uh, doesn't that sound like your public service today? Doesn't that sound like these wannabe kings and lords and rulers of Canada today? Everything is a lie. Everything coming out of their mouth is a lie. You know why it's a lie? Because they don't tell you anything. You ask them a question, and they go blah 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 blah. Well, listen, that's just poison. That's just poison. Propaganda. There again, propaganda from the state media. Lies, lies, lies. You ask yourself this: how many KKK have you ever met on this land? How many skinheads have you ever met on this land? How many radical Christians have you met on this land? And in that treason document, it was just saying Christians. It didn't say radicals. Okay. Can you tell me in the last 400 years that the natives and the newcomers from Europe were building this nation, building a place for a future for all our peoples? Can you tell me once which part of this nation did the Islam ideology build up? Did they invent insulin? Did they come in and bring some beautiful laws here to make sure that we had, energy that wasn't damaging to the earth? Did they invent scrubbers for stacks to keep the particulates of pollution out of the air? I don't believe so. I believe these guys just, I don't know how they infiltrated our public service. And I'm not talking against mom and pop Muslim, okay? Because I'm sure, that little Muslim guy that the conservatives refused to run in the election there, Dr. And I'm sorry, buddy, I forgot your name, but, I'm sure if somebody from Islam put a gun to his head and, hey, you got to fuck your friends or we're going to kill you and your family, I'm kind of of the idea that this man would not fold. because there are those of principle and those they're shilled, and then there's shills. There's sellouts, shills, traitors, cowards, ballless wonders, fearful people. Like just on and on and on. But the more and more this guy explains the communist dictatorship regime, the more and more I see CBC and the fascists that have infiltrated our public service within this nation.
People say, oh, can they lie? Yes, that's what they do. Remember, it's not a legitimate government. It's a gangster regime. It's a gangster regime like Hitler's was a gangster regime, like Tojo was a gangster regime, like Mussolini was a gangster regime. It's just a group of gangsters. They think like gangsters, they operate like gangsters, they rule like gangsters.
Let's talk about some of America's vulnerabilities. I think this coronavirus epidemic really exposes some of America's vulnerabilities as well. I had an interview with Rosemary Gibson. She was on your show too. She's the author of China RX. So she told me if this coronavirus epidemic lasts for another couple more months, then the Americans will see shortages of generic drugs, because 80% of the key ingredients of the generic drugs are made in China and India. But it wasn't like this before. In 1990s, 90% of the key ingredients are made in US, Japan, and Europe. So what happened?
What happened is called globalization. The same thing that happened in moving all the supply chains in the manufacturing center into kind of under the Chinese Communist Party, they could run like slaves and make extreme money, was that also, this is what happened throughout the world. It's the population and density of China that took everybody from the rural areas and put them into these mega cities around the factories, not caring about their health and welfare and safety. Okay? It's this extreme concentration of population in China that makes it a breeding ground for these type of diseases. At the same time, the people on Wall Street in the city of London, these financiers with their companies said, oh, well, the slaves in China work for basically nothing, right? So let's move all the manufacture of not just the world's products, but all the drugs. API basically stands for the Active Pharmaceutical Agreement, API. Those are the basic compounds that make all the other drugs. So right now in the West, and India is the same way, India doesn't make it, it's all made in China. 80% to 90% of the APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, they're in all these generic drugs are made in China. That means penicillin, that means vitamin C, that means basically aspirin. So all of it's made in China. If things don't start getting up and running in China and it's not infected, in the next 90 days, you could start to have massive shortages in the West. And this is why people are just waking up to this. And I've been saying from day one, the globalization project, which concentrated everything into China, because the poor Chinese workers work for nothing. And they have no environmental safety. They have no mental safety. That's why no mental hygiene. That's why the suicide rates are so high. They have no labor laws. They're treated as basically slaves. Okay, and so certainly the capitalists and the corporations want to partner with the CCP. They'd rather have slaves make things, because slaves make things less expensive. But for the rest of the world, this is what the economic contagion. You have both a health contagion and you have an economic contagion. The economic contagion is now just start to spread throughout the entire world, and it's going to have a massive impact. And it should have an impact. This is the wake-up call the world needed.
You know, the strange thing is this is also dangerous for the pharmaceutical companies, because what the Chinese government do is they push out all their companies, and they have very competitive prices, and they basically push out all the foreign competitors in the market. They become a monopoly, and then at that time they raise the price. So if those pharmaceutical companies know this is what's going to happen, I mean, don't they need to change the situation? What's that?
Well, they're not going to change the situation because they're making so much money. The American people have to change the situation. You know, I'm not one to sit there and say, oh, this is incumbent upon the people. People have to wake up. They have to start watching your show. They have to read the Epoch Times. They have to come to War Room Pandemic. It's incumbent upon the American people and the people of the world to wake up and understand that the corporate interest and the vested interest and the financiers have been selling the lies of the Chinese Communist Party. And now they can't cover up the lies anymore. This virus is making those lies non-sustainable. And you're about to see all this. But this is the people have to wake up. Once the people wake up and force the politicians. Remember, politicians are not leaders. Politicians are followers. It's the people that have to drive this. Then you're going to have a reckoning for the drug companies. You're going to have a reckoning, particularly on the generic drugs. We're about to have a very big reckoning in the United States. We don't make any of the masks. We don't make any of the consumables. We don't make any of the gowns. We don't make any of the gloves. None of it's made here in the West. There's literally 30 days of inventory. So this is going to get to be a big problem, and it should be a big problem.
And we talked about this with Rosemary. I mean, if all these gears are made in China, if the U.S. has an epidemic, what's going to happen? The Chinese government can weaponize their dominance.
It's okay, but gets to a deeper point. Rosemary's book came out 2 years ago. Okay, China RX, how China has now dominated the manufacturing, the pharmaceutical business, and how it's a national security problem. The book didn't sell many copies. She didn't get on TV anywhere. The book wasn't really reviewed. It was crickets. They specifically didn't want to talk about the book. Why is that? Because the drug makers take most of the ads out on TV. The drug makers are in business with the TV operations. That's how they make money. So they don't want Rosemary's book. They want to suppress Rosemary's book. Rosemary's book now, 2 years later, is becoming a hit. Why is that? Because we're in a crisis. In a crisis, people turn and say, hey, how did this go on? They said, oh, this woman named Rosemary Gibson, she explained this to everybody 2 years ago. And she said, I asked her when I had her on the show, how many years of research did you do? And I forget, it was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I said, why did it take you so long? She says, because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it because the drug companies make too much money. Look, the world is driven by power and money. The Chinese Communist Party is about
There's a really interesting point there, eh? Like, nobody wants to talk about it. And up here within this nation, I notice, like, yeah, a lot of people don't wish to talk about certain things. But those who do are being attacked, shut down, criticized, pretty much how do you say that? Anyways, anybody that does wish to speak up is being shut down. Shut down by alphabet corporations, shut down by public services, shut down by those who live off of the public dole. Those who make their careers off the public dole are all being shut down. This is why we've never had the proper discussion over CO2, over this stupid global warming bullshit and climate change and all the other propaganda shit that they've stuffed down our throats and indoctrinated our kids into. And they're not happy. Hey, I'm sure they're happy with this. Now, like it's proven fact, yeah, climate change, global warming, okay, we're going to get on with the new shit. Now we're going to tell your kids and indoctrinate your kids that, he's a she and she's a he and you might be both. And, you were a giraffe when you were born, and so there you need to get a neck grafted on you, and then you'll be nice and tall, taller than everybody else. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. Everyone on this nation is under attack by a small group that has big backing. And so these small groups, like the shill wannabe hereditary chief that just dishonored his elders, sellouts. They're just fucking sellouts. My old man used to call them ne'er-do-wells. Never do you well. Ne'er-do-wells. Another old-timey word that should come back. Fucking bunch of ne'er-do-wells. But yeah, that's exactly what's been going on here too. It's fucking crazy, and you and I have allowed it, and we are allowing it. Simple as that. We should have been standing up a long time ago.
Power is about money. Okay? That's how the world's driven. The same way in the West. But in the West, We have the ability to vote. You have the ability to have democracy. You have the ability to keep your politicians accountable. That's the power of the little guy. The little guy's power, he has a vote. And when he binds together
Okay, so here's another issue that, well, this man's an American, so, but here's an issue I see within this nation. What ability do we have to hold public servants accountable? Do you mean like, say a private prosecution, where the man who is moving the court is locked out of the court, and then they have a stay of the charges because the man didn't show up? Is that what you say what accountability is? How is a man or a woman on this land supposed to hold any one of these traitorous fascist infiltrators within our public service liable? You tell me how. They can say one thing and then they can run it through a whole legal system, bureaucratic legal system, take everything you fucking have, never ever have your fucking day in court. That's what's happening on this land within this nation by this public service. So, I'm glad, they still may have that down there, but it sure is disappearing unless you are certain persons of title and favor and on and on and on. That's the difference right now. You try and hold somebody accountable. I mean, it's like they're forcing us to clan up again. What are we supposed to do? They've got us all divided. I mean, you don't know your neighbor in your own neighborhood, so it's not like you can have neighborhood committees, because everybody in the neighborhood hates each other, and because we can't agree to disagree, we all have to hate each other because of our differences, rather than coming together and working out our differences. And this whole fucking propaganda on global warming, climate change, and da-da-da-da-da, and it's a scientific fact, actually proves it. I believe that was the big experiment. That lie was the big fascist experiment to see what they could do to the Western world and the free world.
With other little guys, they have extreme power. That's the Trump movement, it's the Bernie Sanders movement, it's AOC. You see this throughout the world starting to catch on fire. One day, when China's free, it's not because the rest of the world came in to free China, it's the Chinese people, old 100 names, finally got a belly full of it. And he threw off the bad guys. And then he's going to have a vote. And then every politician in China is going to be held accountable. So don't think we have some magic solution in the West, because Rosemary Gibson's book was suppressed. Why was it suppressed? The vested interest that makes so much money didn't want to talk about the reality that Rosemary Gibson had seen. Now, because of this crisis, it's coming out. And things will change, because in a democracy, it's the little guy that can demand change.
Has she got on CNBC yet?
I don't think she's no. I don't think she's gotten. She has not. She has not.
She
Yeah,
hasn't.
she has not gotten on there because of the pharmaceutical companies, etc. So we'll have to see. Look, remember, every day here, for your audience, particularly the people in China, don't think it's perfect here. It's not perfect. The little guy always has to fight, right? That's why President Trump's so popular. He basically became the voice of the little guy on the right. It's why Bernie Sanders and AOC are so popular. They're for the little guy on the left. This is why you have these movements throughout the world. Bolsonaro in Brazil, Salvini in Italy, Modi in India, Abe in Japan, right? Le Pen in France, Nigel Farage on Brexit. Why? They're voices for the little people. But every day is a struggle. Every day is a fight. As one day when China's free and China has democracy, don't understand that's also not a panacea. It's going to be a million times better than living as a slave to the Chinese Communist Party, but still every day you're going to have to fight for your rights. You're going to have to fight for what's right. It's just it's the nature of democracy.
Let's talk about the big picture economy. Apple has closed all his 42 stores in China, and so did IKEA and Starbucks. I mean, how big of an impact do you think it is on the...
Well, it depends on how quickly they get control of it, but I don't think it's just the retail. Those are retail operations in China, which are bad enough. And you see that retail, and particularly high-end, where China has driven the luxury market for years and years and years, that's collapsed. More importantly, when you talk to Apple, I'm less concerned about are they closing Apple stores in Beijing than is Foxconn opening the factory in Shenzhen that makes this phone. That's the heart of it. And right now, Terry Guo, and I've talked to this many times on this show, he's totally tied to the CCP. That's why he ran for the president of Taiwan. He was going to be the CCP's representative. Terry Guo is not exactly somebody that cares a lot about his employees. They have a very high suicide rate. Terry Guo cannot open up the massive plants in southern China because of the virus, and they've tried. The key to everything right now is to see what's going on in those massive factories, the technology and electronics factories in the South. If they can't open up, and they can't open up quickly because the way the system's been put together, it's called just-in-time inventory. The Chinese factory can make it, and they can work the production lines overnight and work the poor Chinese workers to death to get the product out the door. That means the West does not have to keep a lot of inventory in its balance sheet. It basically will get shipped into an Apple store or to Walmart in several weeks, from a freighter, a tanker, a cargo ship on the Pacific to the ports in Los Angeles, the West Coast, to trains, into the inventory, etc. But very little inventory is kept. That's because the Chinese factories work around the clock. Now, what we're finding out, with no Chinese factories open after Golden Week, you have the inventory you have is what's on the cargo vessels, what's in the warehouses, or what's in the stores. And people are saying, hey, that may last us 30, 60, 90 days. We don't know because we've never had this situation. Remember, in human history, this has never happened before. We've never had a concentration of a global supply chain from the globalists. And we've also never had one country that it all emanated from, and we've never had that country in lockdown. Remember, as we sit here today, the world has about 7.5, 7.6 billion people. 10% of the world's population is under quarantine in China. That's never happened in the history of the world. It's never been tried before. It's really biblical in scale to think about what this is Old Testament stuff, right? About this plague and how it's being dealt with. So we don't know. And the reason we don't know, nothing on this scale has ever been done before. But what I can tell you, it's not the luxury stores or the high-end stores in Shanghai or in Beijing and the great shopping areas that are the concern, although they're all closed. What is the concern is those factories. Can they get up and going in putting forward? But I will say one thing for your audience, and this is what the CCP has brought on the Chinese people. It will never go back to the way it was. You're going to see these companies in the West are going to say, hey, we didn't see this thing coming. We were lied to when it happened. We need to have stability. And I think you're going to start to see the big manufacturing facilities ultimately start to go to other places around Asia and ultimately back to the United States. And so I think it's going to have a massive impact on the Chinese economy.
So that's the question. If this short-term thing can become long-term, because if you look back, for the SARS epidemic in 2003, 2004, the economy was affected only for 1.5 quarters, and then things...
Two things are different. China was very small. It was only about a $1.5 trillion economy at that time. Okay. Also, China was not the centerpiece of the global logistics chain. It was trying to. The Chinese economy today is basically $17 trillion, right next to the American economy. But more importantly, the entire global logistics chains comes from those factories. Particularly, remember, Wuhan is a telecommunication and air travel in a logistics center throughout China. Then you have the factories in the South. The factories in the South are the global supply chain. It's not part of it. It's the central part of it. The world's economy has radically changed on the backs of the Chinese people in the last 15 or 20 years. That's where you're talking something very differently. But just the way the capitalists think, you need stability. The Chinese will always say, we have stability. We have a firewall. We have a docile population. I have facial record, technology. I have social credit. They got to behave like good boys and girls, or will affect their lifestyle. They're essentially slave labor force, and we have total control because we're the Chinese Communist Party. So it's complete stability to put your plant here, to put your capital here, that we will take care of everything else. And as long as the capitalists look the other way on the freedom, right, of the Chinese people, the system worked. But then when it started to crack, trust me, the capitalists will be the first guys to bolt because they say, hey, we tell the world that they're okay, but we know they lied to us, right? Remember, they lied about SARS, but it wasn't important enough at the time to have catastrophic consequences. And as soon as the West got involved, the SARS thing, Dr. Gabriel Leung in Hong Kong University, the great Hong Kong Chinese doctor, is really one of the people that came up with the SARS solution. So it's just totally different today, but it's going to have a massive long-term impact, there's no doubt.
Anything else you want to add?
I just think this is a crisis of historic proportion. They're going to look back this in 100 years from now about how everybody behaved. And that's why we're working 24 hours a day here at the War Room on pandemic to get all the information out. I would just tell all your readers, and the Epoch Times reporting has been amazing. Your show has been amazing. But right now, they're going to look back 100 years from now on what we're actually doing and saying right now. It is time that we got to force the world. We have to force the financial world, we have to force the business world, we have to force the media world, we have to force the political world. They must be forced to look at the CCP for exactly what it is. For too many years, they've been able to look away about organ harvesting. They've been able to look away what happened to the Tibetan Buddhists and the Dalai Lama. They've been able to look away what happened in East Turkestan to the Uyghurs. They've been able to look away with the suppression of the underground Christian church. They've been able to look away to what's happened to the Falun Gong. They've been able to look away. The Vatican can make a deal and look the other way about what's happening, the sellout of the underground Catholic Church. The whole world, the power in the world has been able to look away from what the Chinese Communist Party has wrought. Okay? They can't look away any longer. And you know why? The virus, the demon virus is coming from them. Okay? This virus is something that's coming everywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire. It doesn't matter how much money you have, what political office, what your title is. It doesn't matter. This virus is coming for you. And now we know that the Chinese Communist Party, if it was not created by them, and let's assume it was not, let's assume it's natural, they still lied about it and suppressed the knowledge of this and didn't take action enough. And when they took action, they were too incompetent to do it correctly. And they continue to suppress information and not let the world come in and actually get their hands on this. And they have foisted this crisis on all humanity. And now people understand what the Chinese people, the noble and decent people in China, have been suppressed and what they've gone through for decades and decades and decades. Now it's come to the rest of the world. So it is now time. This virus will take down the Chinese Communist Party. Mark my words.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Bannon.
Thanks for having me on, Simone. Appreciate it.
Well, I found that to be quite the show, actually, which is why I did wish to put it up. I believe it's time to force our public service to start being honest, to force our public service to start operating with the general public, with the overall public interest at hand, and not just the few. I believe it's about time we forced the public service and the taxpayer-paid media, okay, that you're forced to fucking pay for, to stop spreading racism and hatred for anyone that doesn't fit their narrative. Now, as anybody that knows me, I believe it starts with a letter. A buddy of mine, he got a letter of extortion from an agency. Extortion is against the law, man. It was not only extortion; it was a threat. You know, it was a document of extortion by way of threat. And so he didn't just write the man back who was acting as agent for the agency. He wrote the man back and that was acting as the agent for the agency, and let him know that he'd be writing to the authorities to oversee such agencies, as well as anybody else who cares. So I think he wrote to CSIS, I think he wrote to RCMP, I think he wrote to the commissioner of the agency, the CEO of the agency, the commissioner, oversight commissioner that is part of the Privy Council, but also a public servant. Who else did he write to? I believe he would have wrote to the attorneys generals. And in that bundle, to each one of those that he wrote to, he sent them a copy of what he wrote to the others. And of course, to the man that said extortion, he threw in attached copies of everything he wrote to everybody else. And I believe this is the way we need to do it. And we gotta, you know, you want to do your petition, you just go ahead and do your fucking petition. I'll sign a goddamn petition. What does that take? Well, fuck, hey, 1.1 seconds, great. Now I'm on with my day, right? Yeehaw. But you sit down and write some goddamn letters. And write them as a man, not a person. And don't write them to the person. Write them to the fucking man. So, I've helped folks out one-to-one and stuff with public servants in courts and this and that. You know, for the most part, things work out good. But remember, because you are of mankind, you are the only one that can stand. All right? Nobody can stand for you. What's the government doing about this? Okay, when you have this attitude, what's the government doing about this? That's when you lose your standing as man, and you become a plaintiff, a whining, complaining old fucking hag, and that's the difference. And what we have is we have a few generations of fucking plaintiffs. Complain. And I'm not saying don't do complaints. I mean, if you got official complaints, you find out. Like if you got a problem with somebody who acts as a lawyer, that's a bar, and a member of the legal society, you write those complaints. Because if one man who is a bar, because each lawyer is a bar, right? They actually are a bar. They're not a member of the bar; they're a bar, which makes them a member of the whole. But any man or woman's having trouble with a corrupt lawyer, somebody within the legal society that is acting corrupt or inappropriately. Yeah, put your complaint in too. I think 3 complaints, and all of a sudden their underwriters say, "No, you got to insure your own cases. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, you've had too many fucking complaints, and we can't trust you, and we're just not going to pay if you get sued." Simple as that. So there are many ways for us to stand and learn to stand as a nation, like the choir guys. The guys put the word out. Hey, come on, we're going to have a choir over here. 1,500 folks show up. 1,500 fucking folks. Mom and pops and sons and daughters and cousins and brothers and sisters and what do they call those new guys with the tight jeans and the beards? Not yippies. Because that was back in my day. We had yippies. I forget what the new terminology is, but at the same time, just everyone. I mean, that to me is part of the nation. You could have 1,500 people in one place that have 15 different ideas and don't necessarily agree with each other's ideas. And there's no reason to have a big war. There's no reason to have anybody in jail. There's no reason to have a fight. There's no reason to have a protest, to have a fucking march. But there is good reason to have a discussion. Just so that you could maybe learn something from each other on your different point of view and why you came, what was the experience that brought you to this point of view? Was it because you have no experience and you were told this is the way it should be all the time? This is the way it needs to be? Because Orange Man bad? Is that why you came to your experience? Like some people are like that. They've only heard evil propaganda from these fascists that have infiltrated our public service and never heard an opinion from any man or woman that say has been out in the world and did experience how can I say it, lack of a better word, humanism, the human spirit, and have seen the human spirit, the spirit of mankind at its best. A lot of folks within our nation are, controlled by the propaganda, and it's all they fucking hear. They don't know the other side. Like how many guys say in the last I don't know, say 30 years grew up and knew that the man who perfected insulin to save millions and millions of lives was a white masculine toxicity dude that put his life on the line for others so that he could fight back fascism and keep it off this land. How many knew that about Banting? Eh? Really? I mean, back in my day, we knew, it was a Canadian. I think they even did a film about the guy. They were working in an under-budget lab in Alberta, and finally came out with it and tested a young lady in I think New York or somewhere around there, and and then it worked, and she didn't die. But they didn't explain the rest of it, that this man was a war hero, that this man was refused service for his nation because of his four eyes. He was the early version of Bubbles, I guess, and they weren't going to let Bubbles in. And Mr. Banting wasn't taking the Bubble attitude as an explanation to keep him out. And because of his talents and his determination, there's a man that followed his conscience, and a man of spirit, and a man that saved lives. That man saved lives. And thank God he didn't die. And thank God he didn't lose his arm. But that is the Canadian spirit. That is this nationalist spirit that the fascists that have taken over this nation hate and wish to suppress through propaganda, Communist Broadcasting Corporation. Anyways, I'll see you later. I'm going to go see what Rageness is up to here.